Yeah, we talk a lot about shame and stuff, and you mentioned that word a few times. Just for our listeners, I wondered if you can tell us in your own words, like, what is the definition of shame? What does that really mean?
Hmm.
We think about being ashamed, or you should be ashamed of yourself, and all these, But yeah, what are you talking about when you say shame?
Sure. So I would say shame is this really painful experience that something that I have done or failed to do makes me unwanted or unworthy of love or belonging. And that's a riff. I forget exactly what Brené Brown says, but something very similar. It's this painful experience that something about me is unworthy of love. And so when you really begin to step into that, especially from a psychological standpoint, the neuropsychologist Dr. Alan Shore refers to shame as, he kind of uses this analogy of, like, if you've ever driven a manual transmission car before, you know that there's three pedals. You got the accelerator, the brake, and the clutch. And what Alan Shore says is that when we are growing up, we have what's called a sympathetic nervous system, which is basically just go into the world and explore everything. It's when you see like a toddler crawling around the ground, putting Legos in his or her mouth, trying to lift up rocks to see what bugs are inside. There's something about us that is intended to go into the world to just explore, but we also need to have a break. We need the ability for someone in our life to say, no, actually don't eat that plant. Don't touch that snake. Don't go outside without looking both ways. When you cross the street, you're going to get run over. But what Alan Shore says is that when we have a parent, or let's say a faith community, that sees our accelerator, our desire to explore, to try and pursue beauty, and they slam on that brake, well, what happens with a manual transmission car is that the engine actually shears off. And so what we experience there is that shearing off effect of shame. And so one example of this would be, for a lot of us, when we maybe explored, when we saw porn for the first time, or maybe we were really angry at something that was actually unjust in our family system, instead of having a parent to actually attune to us and bring in a clutch of just saying, hey, I understand your anger here. Your brother did something that was awful. Or let's say you had a really difficult moment in middle school and you had a parent say, hey, I know that you're irritable today, and I'm guessing, that really hard day that you had in middle school is affecting you. And so I want you to know kindness today. But most of what we experience is a really harsh break in our life of, don't do that. You did something profoundly wrong there, and you should be ashamed of yourself. And so that shearing off effect is really what we experience psychologically, that there's, anytime I do something wrong, I don't need God or a parent to shear that off. I actually do it to myself now.